In 1919, following the Great War, the Peaky Blinders, led by Thomas "Tommy" Shelby, a decorated former sergeant major, appropriate a consignment of guns from the local arms factory. Winston Churchill sends Inspector Campbell to Birmingham to retrieve the guns. Tommy's Aunt Polly urges Tommy to return the guns, but he feels that he can use them to his advantage. His brother Arthur does not agree with Tommy about fixing horse races, believing it will cause trouble with Billy Kimber, who runs the races. Inspector Campbell and his men capture Arthur and beat him while inquiring about the gun robbery. Campbell propositions Arthur and the gang to work with him to find the guns. Tommy's sister Ada is involved with Freddie Thorne, a communist. A barmaid named Grace Burgess starts working at the Garrison, a bar owned by the Peaky Blinders. She has been placed in Birmingham by Campbell to help find the guns. Tommy's friend Danny has a PTSD episode and kills an Italian business owner. To avoid a war with the Italians, Tommy agrees to kill Danny, with the Italians witnessing. However, Danny's death is faked and he goes to London on a special assignment. Tommy, Arthur and John meet with a rival Romanico gang, the Lees, to look at a horse for the next race. The Lees insult the Peaky Blinders and a fight breaks out. Campbell's special force launches a surprise crackdown, targeting communists and looking for the guns. Freddie and Ada escape, but Freddie has to leave town. Campbell confronts Polly and attacks all the Peaky Blinder establishments. In retaliation, Tommy arranges for a reporter to write about a burning of the King's picture, which prompts Churchill to pressure Campbell. Tommy meets with Campbell and gives him an ultimatum: if the Peaky Blinders are left alone, he will return the guns. If the inspector interferes with his plans, Tommy will send the guns to the IRA and ruin Campbell's work in Belfast. Campbell agrees but instructs Grace to get close to Tommy and find the location of the guns. Polly realizes Ada is pregnant and tells Tommy, who threatens to kill Freddie but then instructs him to take Ada away. Freddie instead proposes to Ada and decides to stay in town. Billy Kimber and his men confront the Peaky Blinders, but Tommy convinces them to join forces in fighting the Lees, their common enemy. Ada and Freddie marry, and Polly gives them money to leave the country. Despite Tommy's best efforts to keep the guns a secret, people keep finding out about them, including 2 IRA members. Grace overhears them trying to blackmail Tommy and follows one of them, but he attacks her. Grace manages to shoot her attacker dead in self-defense. Tommy warns Kimber that Lee's people will once again rob Kimber's bookies at the races. Tommy brings Grace as his date to Cheltenham races in an attempt to distract Kimber as well as convince him that he should hire the Blinders as his security. Kimber agrees if he can have some time alone with Grace, to which Tommy agrees. At the last minute, he has a change of heart and claims that Grace is actually a prostitute with gonorrhea, the clap. Freddie decides Tommy is not going to scare him off and returns. Tommy makes his business legitimate by obtaining a betting license. Although he does not quite trust her and is suspicious of her, Tommy hires Grace as his secretary. John calls the gang together to tell them he wants to marry Lizzie, a local prostitute. Tommy disapproves because he does not think Lizzie has given up her former profession. His suspicions are confirmed when he requests her services as a test and she agrees. The Lees rob the Blinders, gambling Dan as revenge for the Peaky Blinders having protected Billy Kimber's bookies at the races. Tommy decides to call a truce with the Lee family so that he can have an ally against Billy Kimber and marries John to the Lee's daughter Esme to secure the agreement. Ada comes to the wedding but goes into labor soon after. Freddie comes to see the new baby but is arrested when he shows up. Believing Tommy betrayed Freddie, Ada does not want to see or speak to her family. Arthur Sr., who deserted the family a decade ago, comes back into town. Tommy wants nothing to do with him, but Arthur Jr. believes he has changed. He gives Arthur Sr. a large sum of money to build hotels in America, only for Arthur Sr. to abscond with it. An IRA member starts inquiring about the man Grace killed. Grace and Tommy kill the other IRA members. Now in love with Tommy, Grace tells Inspector Campbell that if she tells him where the guns are, he must leave Tommy and his family alone. She suspects the guns are buried in a false grave after discovering that Danny is not really dead. Grace gives up the location to Inspector Campbell and resigns service to the Crown. Inspector Campbell proposes marriage, which Grace rejects. Grace and Tommy consummate their connection, secretly witnessed by Campbell. Arthur Jr. attempts suicide by hanging himself, but survives when the rope snaps off its hook. Campbell confirms to Winston Churchill that Grace should be commended for her part in finding the missing guns. Polly meets with Grace to reveal she knows Grace's secret and that she will never forgive her. The Peaky Blinders, led by Danny, spring Freddie from jail. Tommy gathers the Peaky Blinders and the Lees to take on Kimber's men at the tracks, but Kimber catches the Blinders off guard and outnumbered by confronting them at home. Freddie helps the Peaky Blinders by bringing out a machine gun from the stolen weapons, but Ada jumps into the middle of the standoff trying to bring peace. Kimber opens fire on the Peaky Blinders, killing Danny and injuring Tommy. Tommy, in turn, shoots Kimber dead. Tommy meets Grace and she tells him she loves him and will go to London for a few days. She has an idea of how they can be together. Tommy writes a letter and flips a coin to decide if he will go with Grace. As this happens, Campbell confronts Grace at the railway station and points his pistol at her. As the scene fades, there is a gunshot.